We ready to go, folks? All right. Wow, these are up there. Just a touch. Testing 1, 2, 3. Testing 1, 2, 3. Is that good for everybody? We have a new sound system here, right? No? This is just loud? Somebody's been fiddling with it.
New one?
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Winnetka Village Council regular meeting for October 18th, 2022. I'd like to call the meeting to order. Ask everybody in the room to please mute or turn off your cell phones and other electronic devices. And I'll ask Rob to do a roll call for attendance.
Trustee Apatow?
Here.
Trustee Kripe? Here. Trustee Handler?
Here.
Trustee Dearborn? Here. Trustee Swerk?
Here.
Trustee Dahlman?
Here.
President Rins.
Present. Item 2 is the Pledge of Allegiance. I have asked Tina to do the honors this evening.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Third item is quorum check. Rob, you want to go ahead and check quorum for
Yes.
the upcoming meetings?
Certainly. Next meeting is Friday, October 28th for the all-day budget review. I think I had everybody available for that meeting.
Yes,
Good, okay. And then the first meeting in November is the 1st.
I will not be able to be at that.
Okay, John, thank you. And then the second meeting in November, the study session is actually on Thursday due to the election, the 10th. That date look okay for everyone? Traveling, okay.
Thursday, the
10th.
The 10th.
thank you.
And then November 15th, regular meeting.
Yes.
Look okay, great, thank you.
Sounds good.
There is a chance I may be traveling. I don't know yet.
Okay,
I will, I'll let you know in the next day.
thank you.
Okay, item 4 is public comment. This is the time of the evening where people in the audience can come up to the podium and share your thoughts with Village Council on anything that is not on the agenda. So would anybody like to participate in public comment this evening on items not on the agenda? Seeing none, we will close public comment. And now I've got a lot of gymnastics here, so what I'm trying to accomplish, just so you all know before I start asking for motions and the like, is I'm going to move the conversation, or the Music Fest presentation, to the very back end of the meeting. I would also like to move the 93 Green Bay Road item to the consent agenda. And what else was I going to do, Rob? Is that it? Right, and then I'm gonna, and then I'd like to reorder the agenda so we hear the Forest Preserve item first. So at the beginning, the first thing is I would like to, without objection, I'd like to move the Music Fest presentation to the end of the agenda after old business. Do I need does anybody object to that? No. Seeing none? Okay, now we'll move forward to the approval of the agenda. Without objection, may I have a motion to consider Resolution R 107-2022, Certificate of Appropriateness for 93 Green Bay Road, to the consent agenda?
So moved.
Second.
Vote, voice vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That passes. And I guess we'll deal with the reordering.
We'll do the consent.
Okay. All right, so we'll move. Where were we at now? Oh, reports.
Yeah, that's right.
Right, okay.
Yep.
Reports, we'll start down with Rob. Rob, any report this
No report today.
Andy?
No report. The EFC, I will say the EFC did have a meeting last week, and they're sort of mapping out what they're going to be assisting with in the coming year. So
Awesome. Kim, any report?
Yep, a 1-minute report. I attended the October Northwest Municipal Conference meeting, and 2 topics pretty much took up the entire meeting. The first was gun safety, and there was some discussion about whether or not the conference should collectively put a resolution together similar to the one that we and other suburbs have done. the members of this conference said that some of the other communities, their residents were all over the board, and they were not ready to say one way or the other. The November meeting is going to be held live, and the mayor, I think, of our president of Highland Park is going to be speaking for that purpose. The second topic that came up, which doesn't relate directly to us now, but it might be a long-term issue, is several of the heads of the villages and cities attended a presentation by the state and the county related to the immigrants that are being bused from Chicago to the various suburbs and are being asked to be housed in various hotels, et cetera. They had three concerns. One, that the individuals will not be able to work in the United States or here for potentially 12 months until paperwork goes through. So the concern is they're in a hotel, they don't have any money, they don't have any clothing for winter, and the state has mandated that only new clothing can be given to any of the immigrants, that no used clothing can be accepted. So the communities are burdened with not understanding their health issues, the children in school, the needs of the families, et cetera. So again, doesn't impact our community necessarily right now, but the individuals are certainly nearby, and it is a concern of the conference. So that was it.
Great.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kim. Bob, any report tonight? John, any report?
No report.
Tina?
No report.
Okay. How are they doing on the comp plan over at Plan Commission? Anything happening over there?
They canceled last month's meeting, and I'm not able to attend next week's meeting, so
Okay.
I don't know.
Just curious where that's at.
Yeah.
All right, village attorney,
No report tonight.
village manager,
Nothing tonight, thank you.
and village president. I had a story, but I'll save it till next time. So no report from me tonight. Item 7, approval of the agenda. Without objection, may I have a motion to consider, did I do this already? Oh, okay. Down here. Okay. Does any trustee wish to remove any item on the consent agenda for a separate vote? Hearing none, may I have a motion to approve the final form of the agenda?
So moved.
Second?
Voice vote, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. Item 8 is the consent agenda. I will now ask the village clerk to read the items on the consent agenda.
Thank you. Approval of the September 13th, 2022 Village Council Study Session Minutes. Approval of the warrant list dated September 30th, 2022 through October 13th, 2022 in the amount of $1,645,296.70. Resolution number R97, 2022 copier lease agreements. Resolution number R108, 2022 construction engineering contract for North of Willow Road Stormwater Project. And resolution number R107, 2022 certificate of appropriateness building only 93 Green Bay Road.
Thanks, Rob. All right, may I have a motion to approve the consent agenda by omnibus vote?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote?
Trustee Apatow?
Yes.
Trustee Kripe?
Yes.
Trustee Handler?
Yes.
Trustee Dearborn? Yes. Trustee Swerk?
Yes.
Trustee Dahlman?
Yes.
That motion carries. Thank you. Item 9.
I was excited by the Tala Coffee ban. I thought there might be like something up here, but I realized it's just on the agenda, so that's good. Congrats.
See you, Joanna.
Joanna.
Aye.
Okay, where are we at now? Okay, without objection, I would like to consider resolution number R106, 2022, which is the Cook County Forest Preserve Stormwater IGA on the agenda. So I'd like to move that up. Any objections? Seeing none, we'll go ahead and move it forward. So council will consider an intergovernmental agreement between the Village of Winnetka and the Forest Preserve District of Cook County, an important component of the stormwater project. Our village manager, Rob Bahan, will go ahead and take the review this evening, and then we'll move forward with, I guess, comments from
Council.
council and
then I believe-
Chris.
And Chris.
Great.
Okay. All right, thank you, President Rins. Tonight is the culmination of over 6 years of discussion and work with the Forest Preserve District of Cook County. On behalf of the village, I want to thank the district president, the Board of Commissioners, particularly Commissioner Larry Sufferton, General Superintendent Randall, and his key district staff for their work on the agreement. This has been a long process, and we've had to look at many alternatives to find what works best for the district, the regulatory agencies, and the village. I would like to point out that the agreement is unique, given the history of the Skokie Lagoons, to allow this project to move forward. It was agreed that the site was part of the overall Skokie Lagoons flood control system that included conservation and recreation as well. We do not take that for granted, and we're committed to preserving this resource. The intergovernmental agreement before you substantially meets the intent and the terms of the Memorandum of Understanding that was executed between the Forest Preserve District and the Village of Winnetka in 2017. The project consists of 74 acre-feet of stormwater infrastructure improvements across 15.4 acres of district property, and will provide 45% of the storage needs of the village, with the remaining 55% of the storage being handled by other property throughout the village, which includes New Trier High School, the Winnetka Park District, and District 36 schools. The term of the agreement is for 40 years and will renew automatically for successive one-year terms, along with another opportunity for an extension of a 40-year renewal term approval of the governing bodies. As contemplated in the MOU and specified in this IGA, the village will implement water quality measures upstream of the property sufficient to capture and treat the first half-inch of rainfall prior to discharging onto the district property, and includes water quality monitoring requirements for the village. The agreement also stipulates that construction practices, permitting responsibility of the village, performance-based standards for vegetative zones, and ongoing maintenance responsibilities. The various fees required for the project have been finalized, reflect 2017 rates, and are outlined in the agreement. The proposed IGA has substantially maintained the anticipated permitting and licensing costs contemplated in the MOU of 2017. The project does require wetland mitigation by the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, and the Village Council approved an agreement with Res Environmental in August to implement federal wetland mitigation requirements at the Paul Douglas Reserve on Cook County Forest Preserve property. The IGA confirms this commitment and documents the mitigation process that Res and the village must adhere to. The Forest Preserve District of Cook County considered this agreement today during their monthly meeting and referred the matter to committee, and we anticipate district approval during their November 15th meeting. Given the village's long-term commitment to implementing our stormwater management plan, having previously obtained intergovernmental agreements with our sister taxing agencies, and it being consistent with the MOU of 2017, we're recommending approval of the agreement. I'm happy to take any questions, but we also have tonight Director of Engineering Jim Bernal and Mike Waldron of Strand to answer any technical questions that you might have.
Great. You want to invite Chris up?
Certainly, I think that would be
Come on up, Chris.
the right time.
Well, thank you, President Rentz, members of the council. Thank you for opportunity to talk to you briefly about the resolution tonight on the agenda. So I'm Chris Slattery, the Director of Planning and Development for the Forest Preserves of Cook County, and among the staff at the Forest Preserves that have been engaged in discussions with the Village of Winnetka on this project since 2016. And those who have been involved know these have not been easy discussions. So the recommendations by the Forest Preserve staff to allow this intergovernmental license agreement to be considered by our board comes with a long list of terms and conditions. I hope nobody else killed trees like I did today printing out the packet. It still was not given without reservations, and we're not done yet. So you heard it's been referred to our committee, and we'll have a full hearing on it in November. But I'm here to tell you that the Forest Preserves is not and cannot be a common receptacle for stormwater runoff on other adjacent property. Our missions to protect natural open space and flora and fauna and excess stormwater from municipalities typically works against that. And as a matter of public policy, we do not generally entertain proposals to do so. So this case was different, however. So I'm here to explain why this is a rare exception, unique history of the Skokie Lagoons and the existing Skokie Ditch, so that some of you may know that was a major construction project during the Civilian Conservation Corps period in the 1930s. It was built as a stormwater project as well as recreational project, and the Skokie Ditch was built even prior to that and existed on the property since before the Forest Preserve acquired it. So because of that, the Forest Preserves is willing to approve a basic set of terms and conditions in a memorandum of understanding that was approved by our board in 2017 And that framework agreement and the memorandum required the village to research a proposed set of specific details that met our requirements, and they're also required to meet Army Corps of Engineer requirements. So the village has exhausted all alternatives and modified their plans to include agreement with other units of local government, which we really appreciate, to store more than half of the new stormwater upstream before it reaches the forest preserves. And that's just one of a long list of terms and conditions to make sure that this stormwater project is an overall net benefit to the forest preserves. And we truly believe that we've reached a point where it does. So really appreciate the good faith cooperation from the village and its whole team. And but we want to be clear, this is a unique situation. We don't encourage the expansion of this agreement or other municipalities to follow suit. So, thank you.
Heard you loud and clear, Chris, thank you. We'll circulate that to our neighboring communities as well. All right, I guess I'll open it up for public comment first, and then we'll come back to the trustees to open up any lines of questioning they may have. Is there anybody here in the audience who would like to speak on the stormwater intergovernmental agreement at this time? Seeing none, we will close public comment and open it up to you guys for questions and comments. So, who wants to go first?
As long as I was here back in 2016, I just want to say thank you. The county has been a really good partner, and I know there's been a lot of back and forth, as there has been with all our other neighboring agencies. And, you know, there was a balance the whole way through this thing, whether it was, you know, improving the water quality, preserving the trees, not dumping stuff into Lake Michigan, improving the quality of the water we were already putting into the river system in Illinois and making it better. So it's been cool seeing a lot of really smart people do their job, and it's produced a very complex agreement, but one that I think we can all be proud of. So I just thank you for coming out, and thanks to your board for everything that, you know, they've been doing.
Thanks, Andy. Go ahead, Rob.
I'll echo some of what Andy said. It's interesting. I was in these early discussions. I'm not sure how many years ago that was, where we were trying to prevent the pipe to the lake.
Oh.
The big pipe, the 10-foot pipe to the lake. And it didn't make sense then, and we thought we had an elegant solution. I didn't realize how difficult it was to get to that. And that we, you know, before even them, we had to figure it out our own people, our own intergovernment agreements, and that was a little shocking, but I know how much work you guys put into this to make that happen. And I think the solution it's an elegant solution and the right solution for Winnetka, for the neighbors, for the drinking water, and I think that's great. I went through, you know, I appreciate Rob Bahan taking me through because you almost need a tutorial to get through this and really understand and make sure it's accurate. The fees were, you know, a little vexing at times, both with our own other units of government and with the county, but I think in the big picture, it seems to make sense too. So it's a good solution.
Great. As long as we're on your side, Kim, you want to go ahead? And you have any questions or comments or anything?
Not really. Excited for yet one more step in this great stormwater solution.
Awesome.
Everyone's good.
Over on this side?
Yeah, I obviously agree with what the fellows and Kim said over there, but I think it's really nice that you came out and spoke to us, and if you had a different tone, like you allow this on every parcel of the forest preserve, I'd be a little disappointed. So I'm glad that you take the stewardship seriously, you know, of those properties. We all use them. We all appreciate the open lands, the beauty, the trees, the wetlands mitigation. The whole thing is, you know, you should have to go through some hoops to get to this point. And I'm glad to hear that this is something that's not done every day, and the district expects, you know, it to be done right. And at least my following of the leadership on this project, I think we're doing everything right. and with good grounding. So I'm excited about this, to get this moving. So thank you for coming out.
I also want to say thanks for coming out. It's been an amazing process. Haven't been daily into it like Andy has or Chris or all the other governing bodies, but the amount of work that went into this and to figure out a way to use that Forest Preserve District piece was a key piece to the whole Winnetka flooding problems. So great to see you moving forward, and thank you.
I don't have a lot to add, other than I was newest to the board, or not newest to the board, Kim, but I wasn't here at the time. But this is what I do every day, and I can't imagine the 6 years it took to get this to the finish line. And it makes me really happy at a time when I think there's a lot of negativity about government and trust in government and government doing what it's supposed to do. This is, even though it took 6 years, really 5, probably active negotiations, it's amazing. So thank you to the cooperation of the Forest Preserve District. And I think this is really important, and we thank all of our other participating governmental entities. I think this is just a great example, and we should be really proud of that.
Thanks, Tina. You know, the one thing, you brought up a really important point, and, you know, Chris, I know you run into this too, that there's just a lot of cynicism about government being efficient and working together for the benefit of the taxpayers, and that, and the point is that if all the agencies involved are looking to do the best thing for their communities or in your case, the county, there is the potential to do realistic partnerships with other governing bodies and actually make them work and help them actually minimize the financial impact of doing something like this. I really appreciate your work on this. Arnold's work on this has just been magnificent, and without the support at the highest levels of the county government, we wouldn't be here talking about this tonight. So, cynics beware. There is an opportunity to do good business with governmental partners, but you have to have a clear plan and an understanding of what everybody's limitations are. And I think we found that sweet spot of where all of us were able to say, we can't do anymore. And here we are tonight. So thanks again, Chris. I really appreciate it, and send my best to Arnold as well. All right, we've been through public comment. Trustees have had their say, so I guess I'm just going to go forward and ask for a motion to adopt resolution number R106, 2022.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote.
Trustee Kripe?
Yes.
Trustee Swerk?
Yes.
Trustee Dahlman?
Yes.
Trustee Apatow?
Yes.
Trustee Handler?
Yes.
Trustee Dearborn?
That motion carries, and hopefully that's the last time we have to talk about an agreement on stormwater for a while. So, thank you,
Chris.
Thanks, Chris.
See you later. Okay. I'm really happy.
Well, you should be. I mean,
Andy, we started talking to the county in 2016.
yeah.
It was a while ago. My
Wow.
first
6 years ago.
vote on the council almost 8 years ago was to shelve the tunnel.
Oh, it was?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Family history, what
Get her.
amazing. So, yeah, I feel really good, thanks. So, all right, we'll move forward now with ordinance number M12, 2022, which is the 644 Pine Lane variation. This is up for adoption. Council will be considering a variation request introduced at the October 6th regular meeting, allowing for the garage space to exceed the maximum permitted. Community Development Director David Schoen will be up here to review. So take it away, David. See you, Mike.
I don't have much to add, other than at the last meeting, we reported that one of the exhibits we're going to switch out with the garage doors that they plan to use, so that has been done. And so I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Great. Does anybody have any questions for David? Okay, no questions for David? Let's go to public comment. Anybody in the room like to comment on this item? Okay, we'll bring it back up here for comment and deliberation. Does anybody want to kick it off? Go ahead, Bob.
Yeah, I will start off, and this one kind of nagged at me, and I don't know why I was sort of negative on it, and I think actually Kim, when she talked about some of the zoning benchmarks and so on, I think that crystallized it a little bit. But as I was reflecting on this over the past couple of weeks, and actually sort of lament that I voted for the introduction, but it's good because now Chris is here and the whole council's here to make a decision. What bothers me about this, and I have no antagonism toward the owner of the property or whatever, but we have ordinances that stipulate certain size properties have certain limitations. You can only use X% of your front yard for garage space. And there are other, gross floor area and so on and so forth based on the size of the property. And then we have other ordinances that have flat limits, and this is one of them. You cannot have more than 4 garages, right, David? I mean, that's what we're talking about. You can't, I don't care if you live on Foxdale or you live on fancy private road like Ardsley or something like that, or a little street like Arborvitae, or anywhere else. Spruce, it's 4 garages. It doesn't say that you can have more than 4 garages if you have a ginormous piece of property, or you're building a very large house, which we certainly allow in this community. It is a flat 4 garage, but we're talking about, I mean, the word equity, of course, is proliferating around in conversations these days, and this strikes me as being very non-equity. This strikes me as being something that we would be allowing a homeowner simply because they have the resources and the enormous lot. And it didn't say, whenever the village council passed this ordinance for 4 garage door limitation, that it's 4 garage doors if you have a house of 4,000 square feet, or if you have a property of 1 acre. But if you have 2 acres, you can have 5 garage doors. If you have 2.5 acres, you can have 6 garage doors. It doesn't say that. And it kind of dawned on me that this really bothered me, that we are about to make an exception just because someone has a ginormous piece of property that other people don't have. There are probably other homes in the community that could have 5 garage doors, and they could tuck them in the back, but you know what? Their neighbor in the back would see it, so they can't have it. And I went by the property, and I saw the coach house. It's a beautiful piece of property, and there's going to be a beautiful house. And I saw the coach house, and you know what? If they had 2 carriage doors on that coach house, it would look totally fine. It is not a hardship, this courtyard, in my opinion. This courtyard, by having 4 garage doors and 2 carriage doors, is not a hardship. And we're only doing this because it's someone with a much larger property than most of us otherwise have. And, we have other strict guidelines like that. David could probably cite some where it's just a flat number or whatever, and it's not a number based on your lot size or what side of the town you live on or whatever. It is just a flat number. If we want to change that, we should go ahead and change it. But there's no hardship here, and Kim Handler stated it very clearly. There is no hardship, and I just do not think we should set this precedent and vote for it. It was kind of a mixed vote at zoning. I think it was 4-2. And, if it's unanimous, that's a different story, but I don't think this is the right thing to do. So I will be voting against this.
Yeah, I guess one comment, I thought when I talked last meeting with David that the ordinance is for parking stalls in a home, is the way the ordinance is written, not for garage doors.
It doesn't say anything about garage doors. It's
Right.
for parking.
Correct. So you could have 1 garage door, and like David mentioned last time, you can't have 6 cars in that 1 garage door. It's not allowed. In accordance.
4 spots for cars.
Correct. Has nothing to do with doors. All right? And I guess in that same theory, I've seen garages where they have a lift that stacks cars. So does that, all of a sudden, if you've got a 3-car garage with 6 cars, are they now against the ordinance? If it's written as to park cars. So I'm for it, the proposal today, And the fact that I'd rather see cars out of a front yard, out of a driveway, and inside, especially on a property that can support it with all the other bulk requirements, floor area ratio, roof area. It just makes more sense to me. So that's kind of where I stand. Thanks.
Jump in.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
Tina was kind of queuing up.
Oh, I wasn't
She
chewing.
had the warm up.
She had that face.
She got, just beat you by that much.
Go ahead, Kim.
No, yeah.
I'm sorry.
I can wait.
Tina, go ahead.
No.
We're on this side of the table.
Oh, okay.
I don't want to strain my neck going
Okay.
back and forth.
Yeah, I mean, look, I mean, we have a variation process to give us a process to look at individual properties and decide whether there is a hardship. We don't have a strict interpretation of the code, right? We have all sorts of variances, and we give variances all the time for different things. You know, in some respects, is it a hardship that it's a historic coach house? Yes, but I think we should also, you know, anything that, you know, encourages the rehabilitation of historic structures to be closer to what they were, I support. And I think that is a hardship, and it's you know, he could have come in with something kind of different looking, and I think ultimately it benefits the village if we support people that, and it doesn't, I don't know if anybody's here to object, but we haven't seen any objection from neighbors. So for me, it's about supporting a homeowner who wants to restore a historic structure as it once was.
Great. Now we'll go over to Kim.
Sure. You know, last time I mentioned that, you know, when I look at this, I did look back at the 8 standards that we look at when determining whether or not a variance is necessary. And I would reiterate them a little bit, but I'll jump right to the second one. It says, the plight of the owner is due to unique circumstances. Such circumstances must be associated with the characteristics of the property in question rather than being related to the occupants. And when I think about this, I would say it does not meet it. And that's because, well, if you look at the definition of a plight, it's a dangerous, difficult, or otherwise unfortunate situation. In this case, the plight that the owner is facing is of their own making. The owner testified last week that the plans for his home were specifically designed to modify the coach house in order to incorporate a 4-car garage in the main house and convert the coach house garage, not make it a garage and make it like a utility building. Both he and his architect had a full understanding of the zoning code and the requirements in Winnetka. Therefore, this situation that they are in is not unexpected, it's not a surprise, but it's one that was intentionally orchestrated by the owner. So this is normally, when I think of a variance, it's like, okay, there's really something unusual here that they really are not in control of. Let's give a variance. Now, in my mind, the very existence of the coach house, you know, is not a unique circumstance. The owner, as I just said, already knew the code, and I'm delighted that they're going to preserve the coach house. It's a beautiful historic coach house. But then they should have gone in and said, we're going to keep the coach house as a coach house with 2-car garage, and then we're going to design our home with another 2 bays, again, fully cognizant of what the zoning code is. So in this case, they didn't do that, and so they went ahead and designed a home intentionally saying, well, we'll come back later and maybe ask for a variance. So this circumstance is created by the owner. It's not unique to the property. The other thing we consider is, does the variance, and Bob touched on this, does it vary the feeling of the locality? In this particular circumstance, yes, this is a private lot. It's a 2.5-acre lot. But where this house is, there are several acre-plus houses around them. All of them have 1, 2, 3, and there are some 4-car garages, including a 17,000 square foot home adjoining their property that just sold very easily with only a 4-car garage. So this is not a burden to only have a 4-car garage, even on a large piece of property. I think I do not like the precedent that this would set. Just because one can physically fit a 6-car garage, a 5, 6, 7, whatever car garage, doesn't mean that's the feeling I believe we want in Winnetka. We have residential neighborhoods. We don't necessarily have car storage warehouse environments. So, you know, for that and, you know, several of the other things that have been mentioned, I just cannot support this request for a variance.
Great. We'll just keep working our way down the line. Andy?
Sure, I'm with John and Tina on this. Bob and Kim make great points. The only thing I'll say is our zoning code, to put it sort of delicately, is antiquated as hell. The zoning standards themselves use dramatic language that doesn't make sense in the current context. We've interpreted plight and hardship to mean that when people have maxed out in their square footage, they can still add a mudroom, a master bedroom suite, an attached garage, because we've recognized that you can't get a reasonable return, and that sounds insane when you consider the value of the properties in this town, but that you can't get a reasonable return without those modern conveniences as part of the property. And so that's consistently how we've interpreted those words. When you read them, you're absolutely right. It does sound ridiculous. And so I don't agree with either of you, except to the extent I think we should look at amending that part of it. The one other thing I'll say is I'm critical, I've always been critical of our zoning code, but we should recognize there's like a million different scenarios we're confronted with, which is the reason the variation process exists. It gives us that ability to exercise some good judgment and discretion, and that's where I come down then on the side of we should do it. The thing that's particularly unique here is the carriage house. I've sort of dragged my feet candidly on some of the preservation initiatives, as Bob knows. I've sometimes been a point of resistance on that, even though I love old houses, because I've got this sort of libertarian streak, and I want to incentivize people to maintain those old properties. And here, they've got this carriage house, it's there, I'm glad they didn't tear it down. I get that they want the attached 4-car garage. Now, you can discredit everything I just said by recognizing I am a car nut, and I would probably be in front of you asking for more. But that's why I come down the way I do.
Sitting next to a car nut. Everyone's making convincing arguments here. It didn't sit well with me either after the last meeting. And part of it was the kind of the two-part, get it approved, then come back and change the game. That to me is just, I'm have kind of your streak about let people do what they want to do until I feel like I'm being a little bit gamed. And I'm trying to be equitable, and that's a dangerous word, equitable to the residents of Winnetka so we treat them fairly and as equitable as we can. I don't think we can treat everybody equally because every circumstance is different. I also think, you know, what they're doing to the property, I walk that all the time. I'm just right next street over, and they're doing a beautiful job with it. It's, you know, within the rules, if somebody wants to make a house big as they want, God love them, as long as it fits in the lot and it follows our rules. Don't care about that. This is just a unique situation where I think it's a two-part surprise, and I didn't love that. I also think what Kim says, unless we change the rules, it just doesn't meet any of the requirements. I mean, I always try to throw common sense in there after to say, is this really a big deal or not? You can argue both sides, and we have. We're kind of split, it looks like. But I do think that the way it was handled and the trying to be equitable for all neighbors, I would probably vote no.
Great. Yeah, go ahead, John.
Yeah, I just want to go back to what Kim mentioned about the characteristics of the property as part of the zoning requirement. The characteristics of the property takes into account the existing building, the size, all those things are characteristics of the property. So I don't have an issue with that particular one. And I don't see how this will, we always have to make sure you don't want to set precedents for easy coming back next time for the same thing. The precedents on this property is that there's an existing historic coach house they're keeping, and they're building a new house. So the coach house is there, they're trying to keep it. Why not have it house
And
cars?
I fully agree. They could have kept the coach house and then built 2-car garage inside the house,
Well,
because that
and-
is an important priority.
Right,
So,
and I know at the last meeting, I'm the person who mentioned that I thought we were duped a little bit at the start of the meeting, but I think it was presented back that they converted that to no garages to get the building permit going and get it started, knowing that they would have to continue and come back to the board to get that garage approved. I think that's how it was presented to us. Ultimately, we should look at the 4-car ordinance and see how that's written somewhere down the road. But keep in mind, with, I'm not a electric car person, but let's pretend people get more electric cars. Now, you're gonna have the electric charging stations outside of the house, in front of the garage, or in front of the house, versus in a garage. So what does that look like 15, 20 years from now? Versus being the cars inside with the plugs inside?
Well, I
So-
put mine in the garage.
Right, what if you've got 6 of them? I mean,
I'd stick the junky ones
it's
outside.
not crazy. I had a wife and 2 kids, a 2-car garage, 2 cars sat outside, right? But if you have a lot big enough to allow be inside, it's just, I don't see the issue.
Well, if you had asked for 4 cars, 4-car garage, you would have been denied.
Because
your
bulk
property-
requirements.
Your property, it would have faced the neighbors, they wouldn't have been happy about it.
If it wasn't for the bulk requirements, floor area ratio, roof area, I would have had it.
No, you
It
wouldn't have.
wasn't a setback
No, you
issue.
wouldn't have.
Okay, Tina's got something to add to this.
So I just want to make sure, to address the presidential nature of it, each zoning board decision is considered a quasi-judicial decision. It has no precedential or precedential bearing, right? So just because we grant it here doesn't mean that somebody can always cite it, but it doesn't mean that you're bound to it as some sort of common law decision. So just to address it, we look at everything as an independent basis, and each is a quasi-judicial decision. I can't speak tonight. I need more coffee. Where'd Talia go?
I agree, Tina. I think from a practical perspective, though, that residents, when they come forward with a variance request, they see, well, my neighbor got to put up an 8-foot fence. I'm right next to him. Even if technically and legally it's not a precedent, I believe the perception is that some of these things open the door for
Sure.
for precedent.
This is kind of a unique situation, I would imagine, and I'm really relying largely on the fact that it's a historic structure, the size of the lot. There's a lot of things we can put into the findings of what distinguishes this from any other consideration. I think the other thing is, having been the chair of Plan Commission for 8 years, having seen a lot of variations, we do have a tendency to grant them when we want to support certain efforts in the village, whether it's the modernization of a home, so it's a small home on Provident to make it livable for a family and consistent with modern standards, as Andy said, or whether it's just something that furthers a cause or a goal that the village holds dear. And whether they're 2 swinging doors that are not functional for the use of a car or a single garage door, there's still doors there, right? And so why not try and make it as true to the historic principles? Is just how I feel about it.
And I think we've been pretty open-minded, to be honest with you. My couple of years and just watching the past, if there's a need for it, we want to help our neighbors out, absolutely. So I think we have a pretty good track record with that.
Well, and I think to that point, at that meeting 2 weeks ago, we had 2 zoning issues that came in front of us. We had the garage doors, and then we had the home up on, I think it was on Gage over by Sacred Heart or whatever, that Andy met sort of the standards I think you're talking about, where the zoning, it was a strange lot and family room, garage, and that went without a peep. We were all for that. So I still think that this one, precedent, meaningful or not, this is not a hardship. I think that this council and the zoning board are very, very willing to work with residents when there are hardships, when they're looking to do something. This seems to me just to be over the line a bit. But here we are, 3-3, Chris.
All right, well, may I have a motion to adopt ordinance number M12, 2022?
So moved.
Second.
Roll call vote.
Trustee Swerk,
Yes.
Trustee Kripe,
Yes.
Trustee Handler,
No,
Trustee Dearborn,
No?
Trustee Dahlman,
Yes.
Trustee Apatoff,
No,
President Rins.
Just a minute. Now I get to say my stuff. Thought a lot about this, knew it was coming down the pipe. The one thing that I try to remind people when they come on council is that we are not setting precedents by granting zoning variations. We are going to see a proposal tonight, and it is going to stand on its own for the One Winnetka site. It doesn't matter what we approved before. It doesn't matter what we said at the last concept review. Everything is fresh and everything is open. We are not dictated by the standards that the zoning board is. That's the beautiful thing about this. They are constrained by these standards because that's what we expect them to do, is to give us a reading based on their interpretation of the standards. Once it comes here, we're given additional flexibility to look at a lot of the extenuating circumstances and potentially go in an opposite direction from the advice that's been given to us by our advisory commissions. You know, the one thing I don't understand about this from the standpoint of those of you who aren't favoring it is every time we talk about historic preservation, you know, every time the sentiment expressed by various councils has been that we need to always try to find a way to yes, always, because we want to save our historic structures and, you know, which adds to the character of this village and defines it in a lot of cases. So, you know, I look at it from that standpoint and think, yes, you know, we have an obligation to stretch if we can to facilitate the rehabilitation and the adaptive reuse of older structures here in town so they stay and continue to do this. Okay, no precedents, council flexibility, not bound by standards. And lastly, and this isn't a reason for me voting for it, but it's just an observation, but I would challenge anybody to find more than a handful of people who would have ever seen this property in its old state or its new state. Nobody knows it's even back there. I mean, I walk the dog back there every once in a while, and that's how I know that the coach house was there. Otherwise, I wouldn't even know about the property. It is so buried. Bob, I hear your argument that bigger doesn't always give you the ability to do that, and I agree. I mean, we do have these constraints, but I think this is something special only because of the fact that we're saving an older structure, or that the owner has decided to do it, and they're trying to repurpose it so that it stays in place, and I like that. And I won't go into the car guy thing, but I understand the need for 6 parking spaces, and even then some more. I'd love to have 10. I'm not going to get it in Winnetka, though. I'm pretty sure of that. So with all that said, this is the first time, I think, since I've sat in the center seat where I've had to break a tie, but I am going to vote in favor of moving this forward and adopting the ordinance. So my vote is yes. That's it. All right, moving on to item 10A, which is the One Winnetka concept review. Murphy Development Group is here to present an updated proposed plan development concept plan for the One Winnetka site. David's going to take us over, but the one thing I want to remind everybody on this particular process is, part of it I already said, we aren't bound by anything that we've said before on any iteration of this particular property. It's coming to us fresh, and that's the way we should approach it, without any, pardon me? Right, well, and that was the next thing, is that anything that we say or do this evening, we are not being bound by it. It really is a chance for the development team to hear what Village Council has to say, because ultimately they're going to be back here if they're successful in navigating their way through the PDC and the DRB. So, you know, we're all here to express our individual opinions, and there isn't really anything that we say tonight that will create an expectation, at least from the legal and legislative standpoint of what we do here, on anything going forward. So, with that said, I'll go ahead and turn it over to David to kick the thing off.
Thank you, President Rentz. You've covered my first two slides. We're here at the concept plan stage.
You don't have more than 10, do you?
No.
On the 8th.
No. We have,
I didn't get an answer.
and then the next two steps after that is the preliminary plan review step. So if the applicant hears your individual comments tonight and decides to move forward, they would then go through what President Rentz referred to as the preliminary plan review stage. The council would then have to approve that, and then they would have to come back for final plan approval, which then the village council would approve. So just briefly, I think we're all very familiar with the site. It contains 5 vacant buildings. I just want to note that it does not include Connie's Pharmacy, nor the village parking lot to the east. And though the former Phototronics building on the corner is part of the applicant's future plans, it's not part of the redevelopment portion of their plans for the site. So that building will remain, and they will elaborate on that in their presentation. Again, the property is designated in our comprehensive plan as appropriate for mixed use. The zoning, which is C2 and the C2 overlay district, are consistent with the comprehensive plan. So in summary, the concept plan includes 48 residential units, over 18,000 square feet of commercial space, and then on-site parking, 155 spaces, some on grade, or at the first level, I should say, and then the remainder below grade. Next, I'm going to briefly just review, because I'm going to let the applicant go over the details of their program, the zoning or in subdivision relief that would be necessary. Given it currently consists of a number of individual lots, they would need to be consolidated through a plat of consolidation. And as part of that, there would need to be an exception granted to our subdivision regulations that don't allow a rear lot line to abut a side lot line. As I've noted in previous discussions, that requirement is really more applicable in a residential area than in a commercial district, but our subdivision regulations don't make a distinction regarding that. In terms of the zoning regulations, the maximum that is allowed is 4 stories or 45 square feet. The applicant is proposing I'm sorry, didn't change that. That should be 4 stories, 52 feet 6 inches in height. So there would need to be a variation granted. The upper story step back at the 4th story is to be 10 feet from the front and corner side property lines. As you can see here, a small portion of the upper story is not set back at 10 feet and therefore would need an exception. In addition, they would need a front yard exception along Lincoln Avenue, as the code encourages buildings to be close to the property line, so the greatest a building could be set back is 3 feet, and in certain areas it's greater than that. And then on the rear, which is the east property line, they require a rear yard setback, as the code requires a minimum of 10 feet. And what they're proposing in terms of the structure and terraces would be less than that in locations. And then, given that they're proposing parking at grade, that would require special use approval, so that we can take into consideration the impact of the design of it on the area. Some additional relief that would be necessary would be along the south property line. No side yard is required, but when one is, it's supposed to be greater than 3 feet. In this instance, some of the terraces would not meet that, so require a variation of that. And then some of the elements along Elm Street of the building will project out over the right-of-way. Therefore, there would need to be a license agreement in those few locations where a very small portion projects out at the upper levels over the right-of-way. And then also what the applicant has indicated a desire that as they move forward with the project and consider leasing options is to have medical use or financial service use on the ground level in the commercial space. As you can see with these red dotted line, those areas between the red dotted line and the street is our overlay district, and therefore any medical use or financial service use located in those areas would require special use approval, which the council would need to grant as part of any request. As part of a planned development, the code looks for compensating benefits, and the applicant has indicated that that would come in the form of streetscape improvements consistent with what we've been doing in the Elm Street Business District, and they've also added their provision, excuse me, of parking for the commercial uses would meet that. So in summary, this is the list of items that would require relief in addition to planned development approval. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions now or wait until after the applicant gives their presentation to answer questions.
I just wanted to clarify, because that one slide was confusing with the 5 stories.
It's 4 stories.
Okay, so
My
it's
error.
4 stories?
Yes.
Okay, so the 52.6 is not a number at all for anything?
No, it is.
So that's the height.
That's still the
It should
height.
be 5 stories.
Even for 4 stories.
I mean, 4 stories. It's a 4-story building, and the height to the top of the parapet is 52 feet, 6 inches.
Now I understand.
Got it.
Okay.
Yeah. Can you show a slide maybe or explain the Elm Street license agreement, that overhang you're talking about?
What it appears on this is there's some, it's hard to see, but maybe some bay window elements that would project over the property line.
All right, so we're talking a couple of feet maybe or something.
Yeah, if that.
That's the only thing I.
And we haven't,
Okay,
that's it.
thanks.
You talked about the parking at grade having commercial use. Is that for the residents, or is that for to house their own, if we're gonna give the variance on the medical and financial services, is that to hold that traffic for the internal traffic?
So
The benefit to the village, or just to house the traffic that they're expecting for the financial services or medical use?
they haven't said specifically in their proposal, other than they're providing first floor commercial parking spaces.
Yeah.
And that the below grade would be residential is what they represented in their plans.
Okay.
I can let them
Yeah,
elaborate
that'll
on.
just be good to know, understand who's getting the benefit of the parking, which is fine, as long as there's some,
I mean, they
I'm fine with-
presented it as a compensating benefit that they're providing commercial parking space, so I assume that customers of the district could go, but I would have to defer to them.
Okay, let's bring up the applicant.
Hi, good evening. I'm John Murphy with Murphy Development Group, and I want to thank you all for your time tonight. We're presenting One Winnetka in a very new form, and with me tonight is John Tulty with OKW Architects, and he will do the more detailed presentation on the projects, and then we can address your questions as they may come up throughout.
Thank you, John. Thank you, everyone, for being here tonight. Big day for Winnetka. You know, we closed the door on stormwater ordinance, and we open a window on One Winnetka again. So we're very excited for the opportunity. And let me preface this by saying, and I appreciate President Rintz's comments, this is a new day. This is a new thing. We're not looking back. We are simply looking forward, and we're anxious for your thoughts on how we're doing, how we're presenting this project, and it's, trying to navigate its ultimate success for the community. It's very important for all of us, both personally and professionally, and so we want to put our best foot forward for you tonight. I want to thank David, too, for his continued stewardship of this and his help as we navigate a very complex path. He has been a tremendous, kind of partner in all of this from the village's perspective, and we could not be here tonight had it not been for him and his continued support. So thank you, David. Let's get into the project. We're all familiar with it, but I said we weren't going to look back, but it seems like yesterday it was December 7th, 2021, and we were standing before you, and we heard some messages that we took very seriously. One of which had to do with the height of the building, the number of stories that we had. One had to do with the number of units that we had relative to the parking that we were providing. The basic thesis, I think, was a good one. Mixed-use luxury rental apartments sitting atop commercial spaces with below-grade parking to support the housing. And so a good idea was had. The architecture was heading in the right direction. This is by no means a final design for this project, but we're trying to capture the spirit of what it is that we're doing. So let's just start at the ground floor, because we just want to revisit this, and in the course of doing this, Rob, we want to answer some quick questions. One of the things that we are investigating tonight is the ground floor use, right? So Lincoln Avenue, we anticipate being the primary entry point for the residential units above. And Elm Street corridor remains the Elm Street corridor, and we want to respect it. Mid-block on Elm Street, we have two-way traffic entering and exiting the property to access approximately 39 parking spaces, which sit in an enclosed building. There's a deck over the top of this, which is the courtyard of the units above. I think it's important to know that. So that is enclosed parking. Those 39 spaces are, yes, in support of the commercial spaces that are as part of One Winnetka, but the intent is for those spaces to be of public use. So they're not privatized to the development itself. It's safe. I'd be remiss to say that the tenants of the ground floor would utilize some of those spaces during the day, but at nighttime that would be empty and open parking for use by anyone within the village in support of the downtown district and the restaurants and the activities of Winnetka. So I think it's important to reiterate the fact that those are fundamentally public spaces to help support commercial and then supplement the downtown area.
For what you're hoping to, and I appreciate that, for what you're hoping to get in there, do you think that will be enough spaces to cover what you?
We're not sure.
Okay.
We haven't gotten that far yet. Because we want to be respectful.
All right, go ahead.
Yeah, because we want to be respectful of this process, right?
Yep.
So the basic concept is ground floor commercial space that's bifurcated by this driveway off of Elm, accessing the parking beyond, and a residential lobby and amenity space off of Lincoln to access the housing above. Also, the Lincoln Avenue elevation at the very south end is the ramp down to the parking below. And in the case of this updated version, we're showing 116 parking spaces downstairs in support of the residences above. The plan that we have today represents, I believe, 48 residential units. We're not quite sure what that exact number is going to be. We took a swipe at it. These are large luxury rental, this is a large luxury rental apartment, very much a luxury rental, kind of community. And the market is going to help us dictate how many units that we're going to have. We don't know if it's going to be 48 or 50 or 46 or whatever that kind of combination needs to be. What we can tell you is that we're going to have at least 2 cars per unit below grade dedicated to every residential unit. That's important. In this marketplace, at this scale, at the rates that people are going to be paying for these apartments, we feel very strongly that we have to provide a minimum of 2 cars per unit. So in this case, with 116, that could lead to 58, upwards of 58 units to do that. We're currently showing 48, but we have to do a deeper dive into the market itself and determine what's the sweet spot for average unit size. These are averaging probably close to 1,500 square feet, which is a big apartment in today's market. So below grade parking solely dedicated to the residences above. Now we're going up to the second floor, which is the first level of residential on the project. This is currently representing 17 units. It's a courtyard building, and that courtyard is oriented east-west, and it faces east. And the units are working around that courtyard in a horseshoe manner. It's very important to us, given the market and given the type of product that we're going to create here. It's very important to us that we provide not only great luxury residential units within their own context, but when the opportunity is provided, provide outdoor space, real outdoor, livable outdoor space for the units as well. So the terracing, the ordinance tells us we need to tier this thing back, right? It has to have this kind of wedding cake kind of structure to it. We embrace that because it provides us the opportunity of providing outdoor terraces to the units on virtually every floor. It's not to say that every floor is stepped back 10 feet, but in strategic places they are, and units are provided large outdoor spaces for the benefit of the residents themselves. So level 2 has an amenity component to it too, which has direct access to the courtyard, which will be an amenity for all residents. And this is where that activity, that kind of kitchen, maybe there's a conference room there. There'll be a gathering space for families who are downsizing, who have grandkids coming by and they want to keep them out of the apartment. They can go down and we all are familiar with those types of spaces. This building will certainly have that, and we'll have it at the highest level. Level 3, again, 17 units. The building is again now getting pulled back from the east, as is represented by the terraces that are on the east or rear yard of the property. Again, this is an approximation of the unit, but you can see in our plans the size of these units, some of which get to be quite large, over 2,000 square feet. We feel like we're really going to differentiate ourselves in this marketplace given the scale of these apartments. So we're not shy about these. And finally, the fourth floor, the top floor, the penthouse floor, especially along, as you can see, along Elm and even to the west along Lincoln, there's opportunities for some very large terracing to occur. These are going to be really special units up top. And so the architecture is getting pulled back, but the opportunity that it provides us relative to the terracing of the building, or the terraces provided for the residents, I think is really going to help make it special. There's a series of three-dimensional kind of models in here. Again, we're not applying architecture to this. We want to reinforce that. If we are to have the opportunity to kind of advance the ball, our first step is really to start to identify this as a four-sided building and really develop the architecture and figure out how Lincoln lives differently from Elm relative to its architecture. Two very different street frontages, two different uses. One has a housing front door to it, the other has a commercial front door to it. So we want to be respectful and address that as best we can. The orange bar that you see on the ground floor represents the commercial space. Our intent is to provide some relief on Lincoln in front of that commercial space in a public plaza of some type, but again, we're not that far evolved into the building. And I do want to reiterate, we want to be sensitive to our neighbors to the south at 7-Eleven, in that the ground floor, the plinth of this building along that southern edge is really a blank wall which houses that parking that we were referring to, that grade level parking. It's masking that from the neighbors, but as the building goes up from there, it's pulled back 10 feet. Again, not only to offer opportunities for terraces for the second floor residents, but also to offer some relief to the residences to the south. We're very cognizant of our neighbors here, and we want not only the residents at 7-Eleven and our neighbors to the east with Hadley School and our commercial neighbors as well to the north, to know that we're trying to minimize the bulk of this building and the impact that it may or may not have on their property. Again, as we're kind of winding our way around, here's the prow of the site. In the lower right, there's the Phototronics building. Connie's adjacent to it, and the balance of the Elm Street elevation, with that fourth floor being pulled back for those terraces up top. And then finally, the building as it sits, looking at its eastern edge, and it's stair-stepping back away from the public parking that's immediately to the east, and also from the Hadley School adjacent to it. We feel that though these eastern units have great value, they have views to the east and to the lake and to the village green, and providing outdoor spaces, carving terraces into the building in this strategic location will be very advantageous. These are very crude, simple sections. We talked about the height, right? So we listened to you back in December, and 5 stories was just a non-starter. We respect that, and we accept that. So as a 4-story building, we're trying to understand what the height is. And at this stage of the game, not knowing how we're building this building yet, it's disingenuous for me to tell you it's exactly 52 feet 6 inches tall. What I can tell you is it won't be more than 52 feet 6 inches tall, because we're not sure how we're constructing the building yet. Is it steel? Is it cast in place concrete? Is it frame with trusses? If so, those are deeper and they force height in a building. We're trying to present a worst case scenario to the village. And as we dive deeper into this building and its design, and very quickly we have to do this, we have to understand not only how we're heating and cooling this building, but how we're building this building. And as everyone knows, the markets have been very chaotic relative to building materiality. We have an objective here. We have to be respectful and respond to building costs. And so we have to marry best solutions with availability of product and cost to construct. And so all these things add up to some unknowns at this point in time. So we want to be transparent with you. I'm not standing here telling you that it's going to be that, and then come back 6 months from now and say, I need 4 more feet because of such and such. We're confident that at 52 feet 6 inches, we're at a maximum height relative to the parapet on this building. However, it could be less, depending upon what system we use to build the building down the road. So more to follow, I guess, is my message in that. Here is a section through Elm Street which begins to understand its relative scale to our neighbors to the north, and the setback, representing that setback on the 4th floor, and the impact that it has relative to people walking on the sidewalk on the north side of Elm Street. And again, here is a representation of the architecture we hope to achieve. We recognize the quality of the buildings in downtown Winnetka, and the likes and dislikes of the community, of the council, and ourselves for that matter. And we're confident that a Tudor building of this type could be very, very successful in this application. The last rendering you saw that was like this had a 5th floor appended on it, and which was stepped back. This, obviously, that 5th floor is gone, and that 4th floor is pulled back from the street. And John, to just touch very quickly on that encroachment on Elm, it's solely those bracketed bays that sit on the 2nd floor. We want to provide relief in that architecture. So our ground floor comes to the property line, but we wanted to pull that 2nd floor, those architectural elements out. We're talking maybe 6 inches or 8 inches.
Yeah, great, thanks.
Something to that effect, right? To give that relief on that plane of the building itself. But as we get further into the study of this architecture, we'll have better answers for you relative to that. It was not our intent to hang a building out over the sidewalk by any stretch of the imagination. And here's a flat elevation of that Elm Street elevation, and in the middle there, just left of center, you see that portal into the parking area beyond, which bifurcates again that ground floor commercial space left and right. And just some detail, just some kind of blown up details of how we're thinking about these buildings, its architecture. We want to be true to the Tudor expressions, and we want it to be representative of a building that we can all be proud of for decades to come in town. I have to live here too, and trust me when I say this. This is coming far more from my heart than it is my head. So with that, I think we're looking for input from you, and honest input, and we also want to let you know that we listened to what you had to say last time. This is a very important opportunity for all of us. We're confident that it can be successful, but we need your support to be able to have that happen.
Great. Thanks, John.
Thank you.
Before we dig in, I figure I would let our guests, if anybody out in the audience wants to speak to it, and then we can have at it. And the format will be the same as the last time. For those of you who weren't here, we each get a crack at this, and just to share our ideas and thoughts individually. And if you have questions, that would be the time to ask them of the applicant as well. But at this time, I'll open the microphone up for public comment. Would anybody like to speak on this issue? Come on up.
Good evening, I'm John Phelan. I'm the president of the 7-Eleven Condo Association, the building immediately south of the proposed building. Appreciate the presentation tonight. Thank you very much. Don't have anything to question or to add to it. We do just want to be on record that we're very sensitive to what goes up in that area because it is immediately north of our building. And the driveway to our property runs right on the property line there. So we are very concerned about what impact that will have on not only our property line and our driveway, but our residents, especially those on the north end of the building that will be looking at the new building. So we'd like to be included in discussions. We're open to meeting with anybody to talk about it. Just want you to let you know that we're here to be heard. Thank you.
Great. And I'm going to right now do it, and I will do it every day if necessary. I'm going to encourage the development team to reach out to your neighbors and forge relationships early in the process. And, you know, if there's ways that you can accommodate them, wonderful. We all know there's breakpoints to this thing, but without having an open and honest discussion and a good relationship, it will just make the process a little bit more difficult. So hopefully you'll be hearing from folks, and we'll be able to keep the conversation going. Thanks. Come on up. How you doing, Frank? Good to see you.
Hi, I'm Frank Petrick. I am one of the people that John Phelan indicated lives on the north side of the building, as some of you know. I just want to say we're looking forward to visiting with both Johns here, and hopefully they will receive our input and work with us. I want to also thank David for making us aware that this was going to be discussed tonight. And I will say preliminarily, this is a great improvement over what we saw last December. So that leads me to be optimistic. But I will also likely be participating in meetings and giving these folks feedback. So it's nice to see all of you.
Yeah, good to see you, Frank. It's been a while. Maybe we can get together on something besides One Winnetka one of these days. Would anyone else like to speak on this issue? Hearing none, I'll go ahead and end the public comment period, and we'll bring it up here. Why don't we start, Bob, can we start with you? Sure. And then we'll just go back and forth.
Well, ordinarily, I don't have much interest in this topic, but tonight, I guess I'll comment. You did hear us, and thank you for doing that. I think this has come a long, long way. Just a few questions. On the height, and we talked about this in the past, I'm sorry to bring up the past, but the fact that Elm Street slopes. Sure. Does the height matter? And again, I'm not an architect, John, but does the height matter at the east end versus the west end because of the slope of Elm Street? In other words, are we 52.5 feet from ground to peak?
From ground, yeah. At any point.
At any point?
Right.
So you're actually lower a little bit on the east side?
I apologize, but I don't know. I think there's about a 3.5 foot grade differential from the, let's call it the southwest corner of the property to the northeast corner of the property. And where that 52 feet, I want to say that might be a median height.
A median
height. That might be the height of the building at its midpoint, but I am not certain.
Okay.
But you bring up a good point, and I didn't touch on it, I apologize. There is a height differential. The building will be, let's call it 50 feet at one point, and it might be 52 feet 6 at another point, simply because of the grade that's falling away from it.
Right. Okay, well, that'll be flushed out, of course.
We will flush that out.
Couple other things. Not a lot of talk about the Phototronics building or the Connie's building. And I just want to make sure we all understand, you will continue to own the Phototronics building? You'll just recast it and?
Yes. Yeah.
And lease it out?
Reset it and lease it up, yep.
Yeah, okay.
To the extent the Connie's building would become available, where it would clearly be accretive.
Yeah.
To assemble or connect to this site. But we don't have that as of yet. But if the opportunity avails itself, we're very interested in acquiring it.
Okay.
At a reasonable price, obviously.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, but we can develop around it within the context of this plan. But again, if it becomes available, we will be in pursuit.
And the assumption would be that the north side would just
that's right.
Just rise
Exactly.
along with the rest of the building. Okay. You talked about the setbacks. I think the public benefit, the parking garage, if I'm hearing it correctly, that will just be a public parking all day long? Or, so it's just a public parking?
Correct.
So the medical and the financial customers will go in there or not go in
And
there.
I don't want this to be at all misleading. I've discussed this a few times, but we're asking for that kind of relief of use as it relates to medical and financial services. But there's going to be other integrated uses, whether it's, boutiques of some sort, or because we're pushing this to such a high, I guess, rental level. There's expectations of the, kind of the processional experience that a residence here would have. We're not going to have just some, medical office in the face adjacent to the entry to this building or something, but there's going to be a mix, and all we're seeking is the opportunity or option to pursue medical office and/or financial services related. From financial services, a very low activity in parking consumer in a community like this. So,
Right. Well, on that point at the
Yep.
moment, and I'm interested in learning more about
Sure.
that, and I think, Andy, you talked about this last, that there's no shortage of density over there in that edge of town right now anyway.
Yep.
And so, and I appreciate the overlay district and so on, but from my perspective, I would not have a problem with the special use on that. So that's just me. On the public benefit again, so we have the parking garage, we have the streetscape. David, does the streetscape public benefit go on both sides of Lincoln or just on the east side of Lincoln?
east side.
It's just the east, all right, so it's along the east and then down Elm, so just.
Correct.
All right, contiguous to the property. Okay, well, I think this is a nice proposal. I really do. I think this has come a long way. You look at the footprint, you look at the, sort of the metrics of the building versus, again, where we were way back when, where we were in December. I think it's more comfortably fitting onto this parcel. And to me, that was always important. And I think you're on your way, in
Great.
my opinion.
Well, thank you.
Thanks, Bob. Kim, you want to go next?
Sure. I did have a question about the height. What is the height of the ceilings in the apartments?
Well, we're going to kind of mess around with that a little bit, but typically a minimum height would be 9 at this level, maybe 9.5. But it's all in the context of the area that you're dealing with, because if you push it too high, it all of a sudden feels it doesn't feel right. But typically at this level of luxury, you're at 9.5 on average.
Okay, so that's what I was.
And that's driving
They are-
that 50-foot
So,
height naturally when you take into account MEP or mechanical, HVAC and the like.
okay, so with
how that's distributed.
nine-ish
Yeah,
tall ceilings,
Yep.
we're at the 52 feet tall.
yeah.
Okay. I had a question maybe for David. In terms of the parking, I do see that you're being very generous and well beyond the zoning for the parking for the residents.
Yes.
If, once a building is in place, if the owners decide the mix needs to change, do they have to come back to the council and ask to change the mix from commercial to what are dedicated to the apartments, as long as they stay within what the requirements are?
In the end, it would be what the final development agreement states.
Okay.
In terms of what flexibility we may provide them, so.
There's typically a minimum ratio.
Because, right now,
Against
you're
unit
just,
count.
and again, as owners, I was wondering what else, and you realize we do need more commercial parking, given
Sure.
what your tenants might be,
Mhm.
how that mix might change, because certainly you have a little bit of leeway
Yep.
there. Okay. That's all I have for now.
All right,
Go
good.
ahead, John.
Great. As far as the medical and financial, I understand you just thinking ahead. Instead of just limiting those two, maybe you asked to just remove the overlay on this property. Just, that's my input, and I'd be okay with that. That gives you the flexibility, obviously. As far as the phototronics building, I understand that's part of the property, but maybe still keep it as a separate parcel. I don't know if you're gonna connect it with the legal descriptions and the ownership. Maybe keep it separate so you can sell it sometime down the road, or someone comes in and redevelops it.
Yeah,
Just a thought.
it's kind of an odd type of property.
Yeah,
We'll probably be best to kind of keep it together, at least for now.
yeah.
Again, to the extent that Connie's piece becomes available,
Right.
that's,
Yeah, I'm just thinking ahead, if you ever want to sell,
and I don't think we'd want to jettison off that corner, because whether it's now 5, 10, 15 years from now,
and lose control.
it kind of, yeah, it's just kind of this cavity in the site that I think inevitably, whether it's us or some successor, would want to own and control.
Right, yep. And I'm thinking that as far as the parking goes for the residential down below,
Yes,
that'll probably be a secured residential parking lot.
yes.
So probably not the opportunity to remix it with public.
No,
Possibly a tenant, possibly,
yeah,
of the building.
yeah, for dedicated
Of a,
parking,
of a
sure.
retail or a commercial tenant.
Yep.
Possibly. And I know the parking seems low, 39 spaces for 18,000 feet, but also keeping in mind, I guess, that it is a downtown area and there is
Yeah.
street parking still.
Yes.
So that 39 spaces may really end up being employees of that retail areas.
Yeah, and I think
Yeah.
if you look at the use, like financial services as well as medical, those are more
Right,
day-driven,
right.
weekday-driven activity for the most part, and
Sure.
half the day on Saturday and then open for the balance. So to serve restaurants and their overflow, I think it's going to be a natural
Good, good.
option for the community.
I would say too that in a typical scenario like that, the employee parking will not be adjacent to no more than the Starbucks wants the baristas to be the first spot
Right.
on Chestnut. They want them parking somewhere else.
Okay.
Or I think it would ultimately end up where the employee parking might be in the public lot.
Right, so make sure we coordinate that with
And
David.
and so that the 39 spaces or whatever we end up with there are really available for the
Sure.
customer experience, whomever that might be.
Right, okay.
You
good.
always know where the Walmart employees are parked.
Right, yep. Yeah, so overall, I mean, thanks for coming back with a new design, new concept. I think it's all good. You'll look at your ADA spaces as somewhere down the road. That's minor.
Yeah, yeah,
I think you're short, but that's no big deal. But overall, I think it's great improvement. Thank you.
Thank you.
Andrew?
Never had any doubt you guys would pull it together, so. You listened clearly. Very happy that fifth floor is gone, and I think you've given a basis for developing something that could be really spectacular. So there's a lot of things I like, but there's not anything that stands out that I'm like, I don't like. So I know you have to develop it more, and I look
Sure.
forward to seeing how that works. And I'm with everybody else on the zoning relief. There's a lot of stability and money and medical space, and so I think that's a wise way to use that space without overburdening this area. You know, it's over the course of this project, this has gone from a very dead part of town to a very busy part of town, and so you get sort of caught up in that. Do we want more or less? And I think by having this as an option for you as you kind of develop it, you can make the call as you pull it together.
Sure.
So, great work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
All right, Tina?
Well, I appreciate the design. I'm probably the only one who probably has a couple concerns. And I didn't voice them in December, but I have thought about it some more, about the mid-block driveway. You know, sitting through 50-plus hours of one of the One Winnetka public hearings, we heard a lot from the public about concerns about the Hadley School of the Blind people, as well as students coming down Elm. And when you look at that entrance, you know, a two-way entrance coming in and out with a blind spot from the building, I think it is going to be a safety issue, and I think it's going to be an issue going into the public hearing. So my only suggestion, is there a way to put all the parking off of Lincoln? And you may have already looked at that, but I think it's going to be an issue. It's a problem even with one-way traffic with the Walgreens having a mid-block. And I supported it at the time, you know, on the Plan Commission, and I kind of regret it now. I do think it creates a lot of pedestrian issues in addition to, you know, our population. Sometimes we don't have the best drivers. I can see there's going to be some issues there. So I would just encourage you to think about that mid-block driveway feature. I'm also probably the only person concerned about the zoning relief request. Although medical dental or, medical dental office space, I think is not necessarily a bad use in the overlay. I do question, I mean, it's 12,000 square feet, so that's about the size of a Trader Joe's, right? That's a lot. 6,000 square feet for financial services. You know, I don't know if you guys have been in a bank lately, but there's nothing going on. And, I think there's likely that banking will go virtually all online, in the next 10 years. So I question 6,000. I know there's a challenge with getting like a restaurant or something on the first floor with, residents above. So I'm not necessarily a fan of 6,000 square feet being devoted to financial services. It's just a dead use. And although it kind of serves the need of not creating a burden on the parking, I would like to see some sort of activity because I think financial services will be dead. But that's, I might be the only one on the council with that view. I still am I know I'm the minority on this. Everybody's happy it's 4 stories. I do worry about the financial feasibility with 4 stories, just with, building costs increase and things. But especially you've got the Optima project coming out of the ground. Those units, I think, are about double for those 2 bedrooms. I saw they're like 2,300 square feet, and there's going to be 100 of those units in the Wilmette project.
Yeah, not that big. They're not.
Okay.
No, I think they're more like 1740 or something like that.
Yeah.
Well, they have 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah.
Yes.
But there's
They
going
got
to
a lot of smaller units.
Oh, do they?
Yeah,
Okay.
a lot of smaller ones.
Yeah, I haven't seen the plans, but there's a lot coming on the market, and I'm sorry, what? I'm a trader by looking at Winnetka and Wilmette. No, I'm just doing my mystery shopping. That's all.
I knew that's what it was.
Yeah, exactly. No, so I just, there's going to be competition for the high-end rental, and not that I'm a fan of 5 stories, but I do wonder if 9-foot ceilings, 9.5-foot ceilings are going to be modern enough for this market. Like even in our homes, we're building 11 to 13-foot ceilings. So those are the only things that I had. I really appreciate you listened to the bulk of the council's concerns. Not a huge fan of Tudor, but I know it satisfies that, and I know that's what people love. So, I think you guys have done a great job and really appreciate all the hard work.
Sure.
So those are my comments.
Thanks, Tina. Rob?
First of all, thank you for listening. Height was and remains important for this village. I'd love to see a 4 in front of that number versus a 5, but I know you guys, you already told us, so I appreciate your, it's going to be dictated as, so this is, I assume you're ripping that, everything would go. This would be new structure, all of it, okay.
Yep.
So you can hopefully dictate, and not sorry to see the other structure go, by the way, so that's, I heard there are other options, and I think that's great that you're looking at that. So I appreciate the listening. I'd love to know, the only thing I could say is what took you so long. We'd love to, we went through this. I know you've been going through a whole series, so I won't get into that, but we're thrilled you're back here. I am, at least, and that you've listened and you have this put together the way you do. Couple things. The detail was, and I like this far more than the other plan from a detail standpoint. Obviously, it's very important, and that's some of the charm of it. Keeping that detail, not letting, I understand there's, just want to make sure that that, it's important. The detail is important because it makes it. If you start eliminating detail over the time on cost, it's a dance. It's a dangerous dance. So,
Yeah.
then the charm goes away. This is only rental, correct?
Correct.
Have you thought about, I'm just curious, I don't know if you could do mixed use or not. I know there was a bunch of there were condos that were
Yeah,
demand.
it was an option to consider. We just don't see it
Okay.
in as much demand as these rental. People want flexibility, they're transitional, and they might rent there for 10 years, but the condo thing is good in certain places. I just don't see it here.
Well, you guys are doing the work on it, so that's,
Yeah, no.
you
it's-
know what you got to
yep.
do, and I love the thought of you taking away the 1 bedrooms and going to more people that we think will go in those units.
Yeah, these units will rent for between $7,000 and $15,000 a month.
Okay,
So we think there's an active demand for that and will be for the foreseeable future.
okay.
And it's a very expensive building, to Tina's concern. We are always running feasibility studies relative to, costs, supply chain issues that John mentioned earlier. But we feel highly confident that this is a project that we can get kind of advance.
So if Connie's happen to come back at a reasonable price that you want, I assume you then build it into your current plans, it wouldn't be a separate entity to itself?
No, at that point, we just merge it with title. Probably just kind of round out the building itself, add probably 2,000 feet of retail, add parking. We've studied it. We know exactly what the value of it is to us.
Right.
And we probably have another 4 or 5 or so units as well.
Would it be new structure, though? It'd be continued new structure?
Well, that's if we don't get it before we start construction here.
Understand that, okay.
I believe that there may be an opportunity to get it before we get going here.
Cool. Does anybody own the air rights over Connie's, by the way?
The property owner has to sell them.
Right.
They own them.
They've got some
There's an
easements and
easement there,
things that were,
10-foot easement
yeah.
comes into play, so.
Okay, I think that's great. Glad you're back. Thank you for listening to us.
Sure.
If you need construction parking, we've set aside arborvitae for construction. So you're all set.
Great.
We're gonna close.
Garage on Pine Lane available.
Meetings are gonna be over at Bob's house.
Thanks, Rob. Welcome back.
Thank you.
See both of you.
Good to see you.
I'm not a big fan of Tudor either. So I wish I could be more excited about the design. I know it's going to be well done, John, but it's just not my thing. But it seems to be the community's thing, and that's what really matters here. Since I'm not going to be able to be at DRB, I'm not going to give up on this. Number one, if you elect to move forward with the garage entry on Elm Street, you got to do something about that big expanse of stucco. It does not look good. And I understand the structural issues with carrying brick up there, but you could split the in out with a column there or something, and it might break up some of that expanse there as well. I'm not going to tell you how to build your buildings, but I'd be happy to. So that part I just don't like. There's just too much stucco in that section of the building, and I just think it all will you'll lose it all. And again, John, I know this is only preliminary, but that big brick band just to the right of that, between the first and the second floor. Now probably there'll be a sign there or something, but it just feels like a big expanse of kind of nothing above there. So just some things I'd like you to think about, and maybe as you get in a little deeper into the design aspects of it, think about it. That was an issue. The other thing is the special use on the non-retail uses. Well, I probably wouldn't have a fundamental plan. Typically, our special use permits run to the applicant, which means, we probably could do something that runs to the building, but that's uncomfortable because then you don't know who you're going to get, and you're giving them a special permit. So, John, you got to think about that at some point, if you've got people that are willing to wait around 2 or 3 years for construction, and are still willing to give you more than a soft LOI, that's fine. But there's some technical issues to allowing this without having the actual users in the pipeline and identified, so we can then make a judgment on, because a lot of times these special use permits aren't just the use itself, but it's the operation.
Right, I understand. Yep.
And I know you're talking I know you need the rents, so you're talking to big national tenants who are willing to cough up a lot of money, which is great.
Yeah.
But at the same time, there might be a technical issue there, and I'm sure David and Peter will help you, think through that and how we approach it. I would be hard pressed to recommend the issuance of a special use permit if we don't know who's getting the special use. And that's just, I think, part of the game. So would I like to see a little bit more retail? I was glad to hear you say, John, that you're gonna try to fit in a couple little boutique
Yep.
things, and I get it. You definitely wanna,
Break it
buffer
up.
your residents if you can.
Sure.
And, 600-800 feet either side of that might be all you need to kind of
Mhm.
change the whole character of it. But I guess I don't fundamentally have a problem with commercial uses in the downtown. I've never been a huge supporter of the overlay district, so it's just a matter of making sure we're doing it the right way and we understand what we're gonna get at the end of the day on
Right.
that front too.
Yep.
But other than that, thank you. I think this is a great start. Give my best to the boys up in Canada.
I sure will.
I'm sure they miss me.
They're going to be
I'm
much
sure they
happier
miss
with,
me a lot
with
right
this
now. don't
feedback
they?
than the last meeting, that's for sure.
Tell them I was kind and I didn't say
Yes.
anything disparaging, so.
We're worried about that.
I'm sure they were. But that's all I have. So, anybody else want to just wrap up on this? We good?
Yeah, real quick question on your overlay district.
Yeah.
This is the whole PUD process. We can easily eliminate the overlay if we choose to do so,
Right.
right? It's not a special use permit, it's part of our PUD.
Until I hear.
Agreed,
depth
okay.
from these guys, I
Yep.
can't say yeah,
Okay.
but it
Understood.
all makes sense.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree to Chris. I mean, for most uses, I'd be fine where they're going, but if like it's an emergency care,
Yeah.
certain uses that, even with medical, I'd go, "Ooh, wait a minute." But for the most part, good.
Yeah.
We agree.
It's got to work well with the residents
Yeah,
involved,
well,
right? We have to be very sensitive to
Access,
that.
yeah.
Great.
Well, make sure you get the phone numbers of your
Get to the
neighbors and make sure you
stakeholders.
spend a lot of time with them and would really be great to see you guys all coming back in unison as friends and good neighbors rather than competing interests, so, thank you.
Great.
Thank you.
Well, thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Appreciate your time.
Okay, we good? All right. Now, this is the penalty I get. Okay, Rob, can you help me? Okay. We are now moving to item 5 under old business, which is a presentation for the Winnetka Music Festival. And Scott Myers is here to present the Music Fest operations, impacts, and other information. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead, Kim. Say your thing.
yes.
Just a second, Scott.
Yep.
President Rins, I'm going to recuse myself from this discussion and this vote because I provided accounting services to the Winnetka Music Festivals.
Gotcha. So we'll call you back in when, or maybe you can watch it on TV. Oh, she can sit in the audience?
Yep. And I do have to thank Kim for all the work she's done, because we knew there were certain years we thought we lost a lot of money. In other years, we thought we made a lot of money, or relatively speaking, and it actually was flip-flopped. So now Kim has got us on the right track. So Scott Myers in Winnetka and Mark Haller, two of the threesome that have been working on the Winnetka Music Festival. I think the objective tonight is not to really get into a lot of the detail of the Music Fest. I've been up here multiple times. You've all listened to it. I think it's more just a status on, where are we financially? The village has been a strong contributor to the music festival since the very onset back in 2017. So just kind of a checkpoint along the way. So I know that you all have reviewed the slides. I'm not going to spend a huge amount of time on each slide. Just encapsulate things, right? Our goal has always been to have something that is unique, that fits the uniqueness of Winnetka, right? It's not pretentious. It is something that enhances the quality of the village in terms of what we offer to the residents, as well as a way to attract people from the North Shore, from Chicago, from other areas, to see, the beauty of Winnetka. And I think, given some of the recognition we've received over the years, we've hopefully, accomplished that. How do you pull something like this off, right? It takes a lot of people and a lot of time. And I think, the key thing that I want to emphasize on this slide
is not so much the contributions, the financial contributions, the time contributions, but I think it's the breadth of engagement across the village, right? It's not just Mark and Val and me. It's not just, the committee and some of the committee members who are here tonight who have volunteered. It's not just the 250 volunteers. It's not just the chamber and the village and the park. It's everybody, right? It is something that is unique, I think, in the Chicagoland area because of this partnership that has been created, that has got residents from around the village contributing, significant amounts of time, significant financial resources to keep something going. So, it's something that I think we can all be proud of. I will say right up front, these numbers are somewhat, in some cases, guesses, right? The first 2 years, we didn't really have any way of counting people. It was me looking at the police and the fire chief going, geez, how many people do you think are here? And they went, well, there's a lot of people here. So, over the years, and we'll get into the financials on how we got there, but, we have had tickets, right? In 2018, it was just VIP tickets. In 2019, we tried to ticket the headliners. We got some data from that, but I think that the overall message is this has primarily been residents of Winnetka, residents of the North Shore, Wilmette, Kenilworth, Glencoe, coming to this event. But I think we have also met the objective of attracting people from outside to see the village. Now, granted, in many cases, it's the kids of residents coming up from Chicago, it's friends coming down from Lake Forest, but still, right? A part of this festival has been for the residents and for the immediate, our immediate neighboring communities. But I think one of the things that we have succeeded in doing is showcasing Winnetka. And I think that's something that we've wanted to do, and I think that's something we've been relatively successful in doing. So, financially, when Mark and I put these numbers together, I'll speak for myself, but I think sitting back and going, holy cow, this is almost $2 million in effort to put this music festival on for these years. It has been, if somebody had told me, you're going to have to go out and raise $2 million and do this, I don't think I ever would have believed it. But I think, part of that has come from community engagement. Part of it has come also from the quality of the fest, right? The fact that a lot of our sponsors have been involved from day one, and they continue to support the fest because they see what it is, right? They see the quality of it, they see the engagement of the community. Organizations like BMO Harris, organizations like At Properties, some of the newer folks that have got involved, some of the financial institutions, Merrill Lynch, they're saying, okay, this is a quality event in a quality community, and it's the kind of vibe that we want to bring our clients to. And they're willing to step up and say, yeah, we'll continue to be sponsors of this. So, a lot of this has been sponsorship. It's a lot of, patrons, anywhere from 25 to 35 individuals saying, I want this to keep happening in my community, and putting up significant dollars.
Scott, I think the patrons deserve some emphasis, because these are people who, in the beginning, came up to us and said, we're residents and we want to be part of it, and we want to put up a little more money. Over time, that really, we had a patron level that was, the contribution element of it beyond the VIP tickets was only a couple $100. But what can't be over discussed is the idea that these patrons still went out in the village and stood up for the festival and got the rest of their friends, and they also got some money on the books early on, because quite frankly, Scott and I sometimes struggle with the cash flow. Again, back to this, that we're personally backing this, and so when you have to pay deposits on bands or deposits on stages and you've had no revenue come in, you've got to have some talk with other members of your family. So.
I mean, I think, and I've said this before when I presented before the council, our goal has always been to try and have a $50,000 surplus at the end of the year to carry us forward into the next year, right? And that's not something that we've ever accomplished. And as Mark said, right, it's meant digging into our own pockets, going to patrons to try and get the next year going. The expense of this thing, is not just the musicians, but also all the infrastructure of stages and the tents and the cleanup folks and signage and all that sort of stuff. So, it has been, I think, a learning process for us in terms of what it's done, but I think luckily, we've been able, through the support of a lot of people, to have this thing basically keep going. And finally, last year, I think, we found a mix of music and scale that has enabled us to begin to show some sustainability here.
The other thing I would say is, it's no surprise to anyone, COVID had a big impact on us. It drove us out in 2020, and we had to recover from that, and we had to have a lot of interesting discussions to stay afloat. And also, it did take a little hit on our sponsors. You can see the sponsors are down. We lost Northwestern. People regrouped during COVID and said, hey, we're going in a different direction. We can't, we're going digital. We can't afford all of this in-person stuff. And so, the whole journey was not without some setbacks. It seemed like every year we said to ourselves, oh, we're going to do it just like last year. And every year something would change and we'd have to reinvent it in some way, whether that's going to the fields or shutting down a festival after everything was booked. So it's been an interesting journey.
Yeah. So, just to kind of wrap up, I think that besides just the event itself, hopefully we've provided some great opportunities, not only for the businesses and some new clientele that they get, but also experiential opportunities. The Children's Theater, the dad bands, street buskers, having some great experiences. One of the other things that we've done each year is provided a financial contribution back to the Chamber of Commerce, who's one of the partners here. The one year we didn't do that, which was 2021, because of the dire financial situation we were in. You'll see, we made $5,900 that year. But one of the things we did do is we gave $8,000 worth of contribution to local charitable organizations. So whether it's the Historical Society or whether it was, the Community House or Hadley, others, and then plus we donate tickets each year to raffles or to the benefits of various organizations. So, the whole idea is this has got to stay in the community, part of the community, with the community feeling the benefit, not just of the fest, but from the engagement of it.
Scott, if I can interject one more thing. I think one of the other things that we really hoped here is that we would put a chit down for Winnetka, that Winnetka stands for something, and that when you look at Writers Theater up in Glencoe, that we could have a broad spectrum of music available to the people in this community. It is the Winnetka Music Festival, but it's also the chapel concerts. It's also the concerts that we've held in our home for emerging artists. And I'm proud to say that all the money from those goes directly to the artists, and adding it up without Kim's audit at this moment, I think it adds up to over $250,000 for emerging artists over the last the years since 2009. So this is something that I hope that if people enjoy here in Winnetka, we can have people coming up from the city. We've had realtors tell us that people have bought up here after seeing the kind of energy that happens here in Winnetka. So it's another thing that we hope comes out of this beyond simply the music festival itself.
So really, tonight was just kind of an update. It's a chance for you to ask us questions. I know you guys are going into the budgeting process and hopefully, continue to have support going into 2023. As we plan for 2023, we'll come back to the council and discuss the special event permit and the various, you know, engagement for next year. So that's pretty much it. Open for any questions.
Fire away, guys. Questions, comments?
No questions, but thanks for all that you're doing. I agree. I think it has helped attract new residents. We've seen a lot of new residents moving here, and they're excited to be in the village, and I do think this contributes to that in a really important way. So thanks for bankrolling it and all the time you put into it and all the passion. It comes through.
Yeah, and by the way, Val would have loved to have been here, but she's, her mom is going through a chemo routine right now, so she wasn't able to join us, but she sends her regards as well.
I'll jump in.
Go ahead, Rob.
So I do think this is a good showcase for Winnetka. And it has, since I've been kind of involved since day one, and I usually get all the hard tasks, manual labor tasks, but.
We are reserving porta potties for you
I
in
knew-
2023. I know you've been angry for that.
I do think, and I've worked with the chamber, I do think there is a vibe, and I know. Is Pomeroy here because of this? No. Is Serena Lilly? No. But in part, it's continued momentum for this village, which I think we've seen. From the streetscape to the, I mean, we're getting a lot done and we're getting that vibe, and I think this is a part of that vibe. I hear about it from many different people. I think you've learned a lot. I think you've been willing to adapt, to learn. I think you figured out that you need to be back where you are now and that kind of mix. I also think the idea of music, as we look at the post office site and have stage and have things for families to gather, I think that's a nice continuity piece. So I think you know, we appreciate all the hard work. I know how much hard work has gone into this, so thanks.
Right.
Go ahead.
Thanks, guys. You guys always do a great job. I'm all for this, supporting the fest, for sure. I guess if you had to look back to 2017, in your mind, did you think, I mean, we've seen the mix of attendees maybe change a little bit from the early times. It was a lot of Winnetkins and so on. Now you're drawing, I mean, I don't know what % you think come from outside Winnetka, but I hear it's significant. I think that's good in some respects, you know, that we're showing the town off. Other people might say, hey, you know what, it's really not for Winnetkins. It's, you know, I happen to think it's good that we're drawing, but what's your thought on it?
Well, two things. One is, I think, in my mind, it should be primarily, and I call it, you know, the North Shore. And you can draw the North Shore from anywhere. I've defined it: Wilmette, Kenilworth, Winnetka, Glencoe, you know, Northfield, maybe, you know, some of Glenview. I think that will always be our base. I think this past year was a little unique because Winnetka residents have kind of gotten into the habit of saying, oh, I can show up on the day of the fest and I can get in, right? This year, we learned a couple things. One is having a bigger name kind of brings people, right? And you know, allows us the financial stability to say, okay, we can pay the bills. I think the other thing, well, one thing we did this year is we kind of estimated with, you know, police and, you know, public safety folks, how many people do we think we can have? So we capped tickets at like 4,500 tickets, recognizing that with sponsors and with volunteers and such, we're probably up around 5,200. You know, we've all sat back and said, it was, you know, for those who were there, it was comfortable enough. I think we could easily go to 6,000, right? So we sold out sooner so that Winnetka residents, when they poked their head up and said, well, I'm going to buy tickets now, all of a sudden tickets weren't available. I think that we probably could have made more tickets available and done it safely and comfortably. But I think that next year, Winnetka residents will say, okay, geez, you know, XYZ band is coming. I want to make sure I get tickets. They'll act sooner. So I think the percentage will probably move back more toward that 60%, you know, Winnetka residents. Is there a magic number? I don't know. But I think that's somewhere where the center of gravity will end up settling.
Okay, you know, again, I don't have any aversion to having it 60% outside Winnetka or the North Shore. I think it's fine. And as I recall, there was quite a bit of advertising for the tickets. I mean, online and so on. I mean, there was no shortage of marketing of the fest for
We put up a lot of signs around town, you know, we pounded a lot of signs.
There were
around.
signs
Yeah.
all over the
Yeah.
place and emails and that type of thing. So but you just,
But it was.
It's a lesson learned, yeah.
It was something that occurred that a lot of people, they still didn't believe it, you know, because they'd come every other year and just shown up, and they thought, oh, I can just show up. This was the first year that we directly sold out, and part of the reason why we cut it off is because there were still COVID concerns, right? I mean, when we started planning, we weren't going to go as big as we ended up going.
Yeah.
We ended up spending more money by putting additional video screens because we weren't sure how spaced out people would have to be to feel comfortable, and we wanted everybody to get their money's worth. So it was an amazing amount of, you know, trying to figure out how this balance. And of course, getting a bigger headliner in addition, you know, coming off of 2021, which quite frankly was a real nail biter for us and didn't work out as well in COVID. We had to get something that was going to be a draw, that was going to bring enough people in that we could feel like, you know, this is not going to be a bomb, right? And so I think just wrapping it all up at the end does kind of belies all of the different stepwise things that you end up doing. I think next year the community will know that they need to get out there, and I think next year we'll also be able to offer more tickets, even for those who are a little bit more last minute in their planning.
okay, good, thank you.
Yeah, good. It's a great music fest. I mean, the whole process of keeping Winnetka in the news and getting the town together to go see a concert, that's great. Only thing I would like to see as we go into the budget process coming up in a couple of weeks is really see your 3 years P&L and also a cost of what is the actual cost to our village as far as fire, police, public works, so we can look at the offset of what we are putting into this thing together, and is it worth it?
And-
So, I
and
mean, I see
Kristen-
$56,000. I mean,
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, that's
And-
what's up there.
And
is
Kristen,
that-
is the appendix on the slides here, or is it just in their packet? It's in the packet.
okay.
So, so that appendix is something that Rob and Tim pulled together, breaking down kind of what are the labor costs. And I think that, you know, to be honest, right, to be transparent, you know, what the village has really been contributing is $25,000 in cash, plus about $10,000 in in-kind services, right, every year, right? It's been a little bit more some years, a little bit less, you know, but about that, right? And you know, we've always tried to say, well, we're going to cover all the labor costs. Honestly, I don't think we've ever been able to, right? We've never have made enough money to be able to do that, and luckily the village has continued to work with us to make that happen. So
when you look at, though, the total costs here that are approaching $500,000, the village is putting in 25 and 10 in kind. They're putting up $35,000 as against $500,000 worth of costs. It's not, I mean, it's much appreciated, and that together with the Park District and the others, I think these are great contributions, and we're grateful for them, and we couldn't do it without them, quite honestly. I mean, somewhere, you know, P&Ls have to balance at the end. So if it's not borne in part by the village, then it has to all fall on those who come, you know. And so I think it ends up being a really nice mix of what the village does to provide this for everyone, and then what the individual participants do to pay their fair share to come to this. Maybe not dissimilar from other places like the beach, where we pay to have a beach, but we also have people who use the beach who pay their fair share when they go and use it.
Right, so I see the village costs on that page 11, but the Music Fest is Val's list, correct?
Yeah, no.
The Music Fest is, I mean,
These are all the music
this is all Music
This
Fest.
is it.
This is
This
it.
is
This is the P&L
right
for the
here.
Music
I mean,
Fest.
we haven't summed
So
up.
there's a whole separate corporation or something called Winnetka Music Fest? I mean, am I missing something?
No, there's no corporation called the Winnetka Music Festival. The Chamber of Commerce and Val's List come together and put on the Winnetka Music Festival.
Right. So I'm asking for the Val's list, P&L.
So we're not going to give you Val's List P&L because that's a private corporation.
Okay, that's
But
your
I think what we're saying here is the Music Fest, for the Music Festival, Val's List gets paid Zero.
Zero.
I'd like to see the P and L avails list, and if you don't want to provide it, that's okay.
Okay. I mean, I think, John, that's kind of like saying for Lakota, right? When Lakota Group and Scott comes up here and presents, you say, yeah, I might want to hire you, but I want to see your P&L first. We don't really do that as a village for any vendor. I think the question is, right, what we've said is we, Mark, Scott, Val, John McGrath, Dale and Sue, get no compensation for this. And we put in cash and we put in hundreds of hours of time.
What you see here is
what you're going
all
to
the
see.
re-
I will tell you for the Val's List. Val's List is the only for-profit company that has never made any money.
You would basically see cash going from Scott's bank account and my bank account into Val's List.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
there's
Right.
no revenue.
But that's not.
So
that's
doesn't
not-
show it to us, or show it to
But
us.
you know what, John? I'm gonna. So here's what I'm gonna say.
Okay.
Why is
And Mark can do it if he wants. So my point is, number one, you wouldn't ask that of Scott Ferris, right? You wouldn't ask that of any other vendor to come up here and say, oh, show me your P&L, right? Secondly, I think that we've got a lot of people who put in a lot of time and effort and contribute their time and effort. And I think that it's, to kind of question and say, well, I don't really trust you guys, that kind of sticks in my craw a little bit, I have to honestly say. And I think that, we've shared information here to go to another level of detail. What I see happening is residents then raising their hands saying, I don't think you should put so much money into marketing. I think your advertising dollars should be cut less. I think you should put less into music. I think your stages are too, you know what?
You must have been on village council at one point in time.
Yeah. No, never. I would not volunteer for that. So my point is, I don't want to open Pandora's box and have a music fest designed by committee, by the community as a whole. This is the financials for the music festival. I think that if Mark wants to sit down and go through Val's list, that's up to he and,
Well, wait a minute,
and Val.
yeah,
I know,
we're all-
but
we're
it's
all
not.
partners
But
here,
but it's not relevant to the music fest.
I guess the only thing I'd say is all the revenue of the Music Fest is here, and only the revenue of the Music Fest. All the costs of the Music Fest and only the cost of the Music Fest are in there. The only thing that's in Val's List has to do with Val's List, doesn't have to do with the Music Festival. And I guess I'd disclose that it's a big loss. And basically, that's where the $500,000, or I'm sorry, $250,000 worth of giveaways. Every time we do a Val's List concert, we pay $500 for sound and other things, and we give all the money to the artists. And that is just what we have chosen to do, and with Scott, what we've chosen to do. I would say the other thing that's not on here is, I don't know, you can decide how much our time managing and putting all of this together is, but at 1,500 hours, you're looking at something that if you went to another company to do, the idea of it being, it would have to be $100 an hour, $50 an hour. I mean, even at $15 an hour, it's, 40 grand worth of time. None of this happens without that time going in. And, honestly, it's something that we're going to have to deal with going forward, because there's a question mark as to, for how long we can keep this up. We're going to need a life alert pretty soon,
Sure.
So,
All right, thanks.
Yeah.
Anything else, John?
Nope.
Tina, you got anything?
No, I was one of the probably last people to buy a ticket because I got the email alert that they were going fast on the last day. So thank you, Scott, for constantly sending those emails. Don't miss out. Literally, I think I got the last one. Just question, thinking for the, and I think you used the 25,000 that the typically that the village has contributed as the early money to help secure acts, right?
Yeah.
And that's,
Right.
that's part of the thing.
Right.
So each time you're building up the surplus, you can probably improve the headliner acts, right? And
Right.
yeah. What do you think you're going to try and do differently next year? I mean, it was such a great vibe there with Guster, and I would say every year the crowd gets younger and younger. And I don't know if that's because people are getting older and older, don't want to go to live music concerts.
Tina, I think that's more of a perspective thing.
Yeah, well, that's for sure. It's a perspective. No, and seriousness. I looked around, and I think it's the dramatic change in demographics of our town over just a 2 or 3 year period, and the North Shore. I mean, there were people that were just a few years older than my 21-year-old daughter there that I knew, and I was like, wow, it's now hip to be. It's not just your parents' concert anymore. But I'm just curious, what do you think you're thinking about going at? Anything you're going to change other than maybe increasing the number of tickets you sell, or is there any,
So
previews?
2 things I've learned, right? One is we go into every year saying, nothing's going to change. We got to stick with what we did. And the second thing is that something changes, right? So, look, I think that the givens are, it stays on the east side, right? Remember the first few years we were trying to do east and west side, that just killed, was too physically exhausting. So I think we stick with that. We've been talking about, do we move a stage back to the south end of Lincoln? The folks at Hometown Coffee and Little Honeycomb desperately want a stage down there. So is that something that we do? I think that we basically keep the roughly the same format. We've also talked, we go back to Friday afternoon, Friday at 5 and Saturday, but I don't think that what we'll do is, if you recall early years, we started off noon on Saturday, no one shows up. I think that starting at like 2 o'clock with the dad bands is probably a good idea, kind of a thing, so.
Yeah, how's the feedback been from the merchants who are impacted on Elm? Is it getting better, or is it?
I think it's something that we constantly have to try and keep talking to them about and keep trying to get ideas. I think some, specifically, the restaurants love it. Not all of them love it, right? It does affect them, and so we got to keep talking to them and figure out what we can do to try and make it a good experience for everybody.
And I think that's one of the reasons why we're thinking about a stage down on Lincoln too. How can we engage that whole street for the benefit of the merchants? Yeah, I think what Scott said is right about next year, but something will always change. But I think more of what everyone has loved. I don't think that we're going to try and get bigger and bigger bands, and we're not going to be getting the Rolling Stones. But I think we've gotten ourselves to a level where everybody, these bands are really good, and they do attract, and we'd like to have bands that sell tickets in addition to, and I think we're right at about the right level now. And a lot of our past artists have gotten recognition. I don't know if any of you saw the Sunday morning show on CBS, but Billy Strings was featured. Billy Strings was in 2018. Billy Strings was in the Haller living room giving a great concert to people in 2015. So we have found those emerging artists that have become, Billy Strings is a Grammy winner. He was basically the artist of the year. If we can keep having that caliber of artists and do a good job of curation, then that feeds the reputation that this is something that's worth going to.
That's all I had. Thank you.
Thanks, Tina. I'll finish it up. Thank you for everything that you guys are doing. This is amazing. I think it's important to understand, Scott, you've been up here, so you know this, that we're challenged with ensuring the financial transparency of everything we do, not just the Music Fest. So any comments relative to that should be taken in that light. That
For
we're
sure,
just,
of course.
That people are very sensitive, especially with the high tax environment that we live in up here, and You know, asking those questions is just part of the
Yep.
process, and we all do it, so. So understand that I don't believe there's anything impugning anybody's integrity or trust. It's just that these are the questions we as electeds have to
Yeah,
ask.
and I get that,
Make
and I think, what we try to do is be transparent,
Sure,
in-
I understand that, but I just wanted to reiterate that. You know, there was a couple guys in the room before who would probably be really happy to talk to you about sponsorship for that second station on their property. And, you know, I'm sure you'd take Canadian dollars as well as American dollars, so.
We adjust.
You might want to reach out there, and
Yeah.
I'm just saying. And lastly, the one thing that I just, you know, based on the comments, is maybe you look at, I buy about 80% of my tickets on the presale market, and I've enlisted in all the different presale venues so I can get in there and get good tickets. And maybe there should be a Winnetka resident presale,
We-
you know.
And we did that 2 years.
We did.
2019 and 2020.
And VIP.
2020 we had to cancel, but yeah, I mean, that's something that I think we've talked about.
Yeah, because
Yeah.
We think that's a great idea, honestly, and I think that we would sell a lot of tickets to Winnetkins on the presale, given that there were a lot of people who missed out.
Yeah.
And I think our approach too has been, it's fair to give a bit of a discount to Winnetkins, right?
Yeah.
It is our town.
Yeah.
And so, we're totally,
Yeah.
Yeah, if you could just reserve a pot full and give people the first crack at them, that would probably feel good. And since there's not seats, it doesn't really matter to that degree anyway. So, but I appreciate what this festival has done for this community. It's one of many touch points that we as councils over the last few years have really worked at doing, and whether it's something as large as the Music Fest or something as small as Thursday night on the corner out here, First Fridays up in Hubbard Woods. I mean, you know, there's a lot of things going on that we're trying to program and create touch points that add value to living in our community. And this is a huge one. And certainly, to a person up here, I think everybody credits the hard work that you guys have done to keep this thing going. And we're all very appreciative of that.
And folks like the Pelletier.
Yeah.
John McGrath and all the others. Yeah.
All the gang out there. I
Yeah.
mean,
And
I worked alongside of
Tom
them for
Brown,
a
who
couple
serves
years.
a mean glass of beer.
So.
Yeah.
So, but thank you
Okay.
again. We really appreciate
Got
it.
it. Thanks.
So, okay, so that's that. I'm sorry I'm so disheveled, but reorganizing this agenda tonight was. So, new business, none. We're on to 11. 12. I have appointments here, and I would like to have a motion to appoint Mark Haller to the Zoning Board of Appeals.
Second.
Roll call vote.
Trustee Dearborn? Yes. Trustee Apatow?
Yes.
Trustee Kripe?
Yes.
Trustee Handler?
Yes,
Trustee Swerk?
Due to conflicts of interest of Village Code, I'm going to vote no.
Trustee Dahlman?
Yes.
Okay, that motion carries. Thank you. Closed session, thank goodness we don't have one tonight. And last but not least is adjournment. May I have a motion to adjourn?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? We stand adjourned.